Let me tell you about a place that has no official borders, doesn't appear on any map, and yet somehow manages to be one of the most talked about places on Earth. We're talking about the Bermuda Triangle. You've probably heard the name before. Maybe you've seen a documentary about it late at night and then couldn't sleep. Or maybe a friend told you about it and you spent the next hour going down a rabbit hole on YouTube. Either way, chances are you've heard some version of the story. But here's the thing, and this is what makes the whole thing so interesting. A lot of what you've heard might not be exactly true. So let's take a good look at this mysterious triangle together. Go through the scary stories, the wild theories, and then at the end, we'll talk about what's actually going on. Because trust me, the truth is almost more surprising than the mystery itself. So first things first, where is this place? The Bermuda Triangle is a region in the North Atlantic Ocean. If you drew a line connecting 3 points, the southeastern coast of the United States, the island of Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, you'd have your triangle. It's somewhere between 500,000 and 1.5 million square miles, depending on who you ask. And yeah, that's a huge difference. 1 million square miles of, we're not really sure. Which, honestly, already tells you something about how precise this whole thing is. But okay, let's go with it. Now, the stories. Oh boy, the stories. Let's go way back. We're talking 1492. Christopher Columbus is sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. He's got 3 ships, a brave crew, and 0 GPS. He's trying to find a western route to Asia, which, spoiler alert, doesn't quite go as planned, but he does stumble upon the Bahamas. To get there, he has to sail through an area that would later become known as the Bermuda Triangle. And here's where things get interesting. Columbus wrote in his journal that his compass started behaving strangely. It was pointing in the wrong direction. He also wrote about seeing a strange light on the horizon, small, flickering, like a candle rising and falling over the water. And apparently the sea was rising in unusual ways, too. Now, keep in mind, this is 1492. People back then didn't have science explaining everything. So when Columbus writes in his log that something weird is happening, people take that seriously, very seriously. And honestly, can you blame them? If your compass stops working in the middle of the ocean in 1492, that's a bad day. Fast forward a little bit to the early 1600s. An English ship called the Sea Venture was sailing toward Jamestown, Virginia, which was a struggling colony that really needed supplies. On the way, the ship ran into a massive hurricane near Bermuda and got wrecked. The crew survived, but they were stranded on the uninhabited island of Bermuda for almost a year. Now, this story actually became so famous that some people believe it inspired Shakespeare to write his play, The Tempest, where he calls Bermuda a vexed or cursed place. So now we've got Shakespeare involved. Things are really escalating. Then comes 1881. And this one is genuinely creepy, even if it might not be completely true. A cargo ship called the Ellen Austin was sailing from Liverpool to New York. Somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle area, they spotted another ship just sitting there in the water. No movement, no sounds, nobody on deck. The captain decided to send some of his men over to investigate, and sure enough, the ship was completely empty. No crew, no explanation. But the ship itself was totally fine, and it was full of valuable cargo. So the captain thought, hey, free ship, free stuff, let's sail it back to New York. He put some of his own crew on board to sail it alongside the Ellen Austin. They were doing fine for a while. Then, a storm hit. The 2 ships got separated. When the storm cleared and they found the mystery ship again, it was empty again. All the men they had put on board were gone, just like that. Then, and this is where the story gets almost funny in a dark kind of way, the captain decided to send another group of men onto the ghost ship, because the first idea worked out so well. And you guessed it, they disappeared too. Now, historians have pointed out that there's no official record of any of this happening on that voyage. Lloyd's of London, which is basically the Bible of shipping records, says that trip went completely fine. So the whole ghost ship thing might just be a really good story. But it's a really, really good story. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about some of the more documented, more serious disappearances. Because now we're into the 20th century, and things start to get a lot harder to explain away. In March 1918, a huge U.S. Navy cargo ship called the USS Cyclops left South America heading for Baltimore. It had over 300 men on board and was carrying about 10,000 tons of heavy cargo. It made one unplanned stop in Barbados and then headed north, and then nothing. It just vanished. No distress signal, no wreckage, no bodies, nothing was ever found. To this day, the disappearance of the USS Cyclops is the largest single loss of life in U.S. naval history that didn't involve direct combat. President Woodrow Wilson himself said, "Only God and the sea know what happened to the great ship." And to make it even creepier, two of the Cyclops' sister ships, same design, almost the same route, also disappeared in 1941. But perhaps the most famous Bermuda Triangle story of all time happened in December 1945. 5 Navy planes, TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida for a routine training mission. The group was called Flight 19. What was supposed to be a simple practice run turned into a nightmare. The lead pilot, Lieutenant Taylor, started reporting that his compass wasn't working right. He got confused about where he was. He thought he was flying over the Florida Keys, but he was actually much further east, near the Bahamas. So, instead of turning west toward home, he kept flying east, straight out into the open Atlantic Ocean. The radio transmissions from the flight got more and more desperate. At one point, they said, "We cannot be sure where we are." And finally, the last words recorded were, "It looks like we are entering white water. We are completely lost." All 5 planes went down when they ran out of fuel. A rescue plane was sent out with 13 men on board. That plane disappeared too. In total, 27 men and 6 aircraft were gone. The official Navy report described it as if they had flown to Mars. No wreckage from Flight 19 has ever been found. Within a few years, 2 more passenger planes disappeared over the same general area. Both British aircraft flying routes around Bermuda, and neither was ever recovered. Now, at this point, you can see why people started connecting the dots. All these incidents, all in the same general area, spread across centuries. Something had to be going on, right? In February 1964, an American writer named Vincent Gaddis took all these stories and officially named the region the Bermuda Triangle in a magazine article. He drew the 3 lines, connected the dots, and basically told the world, "Look at this pattern. Something dark and mysterious is happening here." And the world went absolutely wild for it. Books were written, documentaries were made, scientists and not-so-scientists started throwing out theories left and right. The most popular book was called The Bermuda Triangle, written by Charles Berlitz in 1974. It sold 20 million copies in more than 30 languages 20 million. To put that in perspective, that's more than most Harry Potter books. Berlitz has some very creative ideas about what was happening in the triangle. He suggested it might be connected to the lost city of Atlantis, the legendary civilization that supposedly sank into the ocean thousands of years ago. He thought Atlantis might be sitting at the bottom of the ocean in that exact spot, using some kind of ancient energy, crystals, yes, crystals to pull ships and planes down into the depths. He also suggested it might be a portal to another dimension, or an alien abduction zone, or a place where time and space just kind of stop working normally. Even Steven Spielberg got involved. In his 1977 film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he depicted the Flight 19 crew as having been abducted by aliens. Not bad for a training mission that went wrong. Now look, we're not here to make fun of anyone. People love a good mystery. And when the mystery involves disappearing planes and ghost ships and compasses going crazy, of course people are going to let their imaginations run wild. That's just human nature. But here's where things get really interesting. Because scientists have actually looked very carefully at the Bermuda Triangle. And they've come up with some real, actual, non-alien explanations for what's been going on there. Let's start with the compass thing, since that comes up over and over again. The Bermuda Triangle was once one of the few places on Earth where magnetic north and true north lined up perfectly. That sounds technical, but basically what it means is that compass readings in that area could be slightly off compared to what navigators were used to. If you don't account for that difference, you could slowly drift way off course without even realizing it. This is actually called magnetic declination, and it's a real navigational challenge. However, modern analysis shows that the so-called agonic line, the place where this alignment happens, has actually shifted westward and no longer even passes through the Bermuda Triangle. So, this theory, while interesting, doesn't really hold up anymore. What about the weather? Now this is where it gets real. The Bermuda Triangle sits in one of the most storm-heavy regions on the entire planet. Hurricane season passes directly through this area every single year. Florida alone has been hit by hurricanes in all but 18 hurricane seasons since 1851. Puerto Rico gets hit by hurricanes 4 or 5 times a year on average. The Gulf Stream, one of the most powerful ocean currents in the world, runs right along the western edge of the triangle. It moves so fast it can throw a ship hundreds of miles off course if sailors don't compensate for it. And it can erase physical evidence of a disaster almost instantly. If a ship goes down in the Gulf Stream, wreckage could be scattered across hundreds of miles of open ocean within days. There are also what scientists call rogue waves. These are massive, freak waves that can appear suddenly with almost no warning. They can reach up to 100 feet tall. That's about the height of a 10-story building, rising out of nowhere in the middle of the ocean. Rogue waves are real. The first one ever officially measured by instruments was recorded on January 1st, 1995, in the North Sea. It was 84 feet tall. Imagine a ship being hit by something like that. It wouldn't take long for a vessel to be completely destroyed and swallowed by the sea. And then there's one of the newer, more fascinating theories: methane gas. Under the ocean floor, particularly in certain areas of the Atlantic, there are huge deposits of methane trapped in the sediment. Sometimes, this methane gets released in massive bursts, almost like giant underwater explosions, which causes huge bubbles to rise to the surface. The theory goes that if enough methane releases at once, it could actually cause the water above to lose density, meaning a ship could suddenly sink straight down with very little warning. And the gas rising into the air above could theoretically affect the engines of aircraft flying over the area. Now, scientists are careful to say this is possible, but not proven as a direct cause of triangle disappearances. But it's a fascinating idea, and it's based on real geological science. So we've got hurricanes, rogue waves, the Gulf Stream, magnetic variation, and methane gas. That's a lot going on in one small patch of ocean. It's no wonder there have been incidents there over the centuries. But here's the real kicker. Are you ready for this? Because this is the part that kind of flips the whole story on its head. When researchers actually looked at the hard data shipping records, aviation accident databases, official Coast Guard reports, the Bermuda Triangle doesn't even make the top 10 most dangerous ocean regions in the world. Seriously. One analysis of over 150,000 marine casualty records from 1982 to 2015 found that only about 4% of all incidents occurred in the Bermuda Triangle. And here's the really wild part. Between 1982 and 2015, not a single incident in the Triangle was officially classified as a disappearance. Not one. Shipping data from 2021 show that of the more than 8,600 boats that sailed through the Bermuda Triangle that year, only 2 had any kind of casualty. That's a rate of 0.02%. The global average for ships having some kind of incident is 1.8%. So, statistically, you are about 90 times safer sailing through the Bermuda Triangle than sailing through the average part of the world's oceans. Lloyd's of London, the same organization that tracks every significant maritime incident on the planet, has confirmed this. The U.S. Coast Guard has confirmed this. The numbers simply don't show anything unusual happening in the Bermuda Triangle compared to anywhere else. And what about Flight 19? Well, later investigation of the radio transcripts showed that Lieutenant Taylor had actually gotten lost before. He had a history of navigation errors. Researchers found that he was confused about his location that day. He thought he was southwest of Florida when he was actually southeast, near the Bahamas. When he made the decision to fly north and then east, looking for land, he was flying the wrong direction entirely. It was a tragic, heartbreaking mistake. But it was a human mistake, not an alien abduction. So there you have it. The Bermuda Triangle, one of the most famous mysteries in human history. Centuries of stories, ghost ships, lost planes, missing sailors, wild theories about Atlantis and aliens, and time portals. And the real answer is, it's just ocean. Stormy, tricky, unpredictable ocean, just like a lot of other parts of the world. The stories got connected by a magazine article, turned into a best-selling book, and snowballed into a global legend. Does that make the tragedies less real? No. People genuinely lost their lives in that area. The sailors on the USS Cyclops, the men of Flight 19, and others, those are real losses and real families that were affected. But the cause wasn't a supernatural force or a hidden portal or extraterrestrial visitors. It was bad weather, navigational errors, and the unforgiving nature of the sea. And honestly, maybe that's the most important lesson here. The ocean is already dangerous enough without adding ghosts and aliens. You don't need a mystery to explain why the sea is powerful and unpredictable. It just is. But still, next time you're flying over Florida on your way somewhere warm, and you look out the window at that deep blue water below you, might just think about it for a second. And that's okay. Because even if the Bermuda Triangle is perfectly safe and statistically boring, it will always be a great story. And great stories, once they're out there, have a way of sticking around, just like a ghost ship with no crew.